Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passionate World Radio Network. Distinguish yourself from the ordinary. We are continuing with the International Miami Book Fair authors and their books. And next in line is James Riley, who wrote a book called Story Thieves, New York Times best-selling series. And the book primarily is about two kids who jump into books. And this time, they really blew it. They jumped into a comic book. And then the portal disappeared. And I must warn you, ladies and gentlemen, that James Riley doesn't really exist. There's no record of him before his fairy tale series came out. And sources say that the man in his author photos is just an actor. So, he may be a character from his latest comic book, but who knows? And I'm not going to give it away, even though I do have some inside help. My son, the comic book person, knows him, or so he claims. Shall we find out? Good afternoon, James.
Hi, Lillian. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I am delighted. It's been a long time since I've had a non-existent fictional character being interviewed.
We're a bit rare that way.
Yes, we are, aren't we? So, you decided to have your characters jump into a comic book.
Yes. I've grown up reading comics, and I actually managed a comic book store for 2 years, so it was sort of, once I started writing children's books, it was maybe just a matter of time until I got around to having them jump into a comic book.
And once you had them on into the comic book, I'm not going to give everything away, they did meet a maniac robot.
Yes, I tried to take all of the different tropes from superhero comics and kind of play with them. There's a robot of doom. There's a super villain named the Rotten Banana who speaks only in banana puns. There's a mad scientist named Dr. Apathy who goes back and forth about how much he cares. Kind of just the general jokes that I tend to not be able to resist in my writing.
I was waiting for knock-knock jokes, but I didn't see any. I was really disappointed. Well, maybe your next book.
Next book.
Yes. Aren't you glad I didn't say banana? Okay. And then there's the dark.
Yes. So throughout Story Thieves, one of the main characters, Bethany, she's able to jump into books because she's half fictional. Her fictional father has gone missing since her 4th birthday when she took him into a book herself and then accidentally left him there. So since then, she's been, without her mother's knowledge, going through all of the books she can find and looking for her missing father. And without spoiling too much, she gets some good clues as to where he might have been and meets a superhero named Doc Twilight, who is based on several different Batman-type superheroes. But unfortunately, Doc Twilight has just become the kidnapped victim of a supervillain named the Dark, who is turning this entire comic book world into a darker, sort of more extreme version.
Yes, one can almost think of the Lego movie. Almost.
Yeah.
But I do not permit myself such false visions. I kind of like the character who, her friend, the young man who goes back after he figures out how to speed up going back. And you'll need to read the book, because I ain't going to tell you. What do you think about that? And he finds, much to his horror and great glee, that he has super magical powers.
Mm-hmm. The way that the boy you're mentioning is a big comic book fan, so he knows that within the comic book world, the way you get powers is usually by accident. That's the way we've seen with Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, and several other heroes. So he arranges for a mad scientist friend who actually accompanies them into the superhero world from a different book series to give them all powers, and just assumes that accidents will happen and it will all work out. Unfortunately, accidents don't always go as planned, and his powers turn out to be a bit different than he expected. And so they end up sort of freezing time in a way, and he gets to see the comic book world as panels on a page. almost like a real comic. And so
almost like a graphic novel.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so he ends up kind of interacting with his friends who are still in that page by like writing thought balloons and dialogue for them on the page of the frozen panels that he's seeing. Which
That's
I
right. So when they're not communicating by thinking, yes, always a great magical skill. More of us should do that, huh? Thinking.
It's always a good thing.
Yes, it is a good thing. So what got you into the comic? Okay, you say you used to write children's stories, but you have to be pretty good also at being able to draw pictures?
I wish I was. We fortunately have got a good artist who did a few different pages for the book that are actually comic book pages. I'm actually a terrible artist. I did want to be an artist when I grew up, so I practiced drawing all the time and realized that was not anywhere close to where my talents lie.
Yes.
I still really enjoyed doing it, and it's relaxing and it's fun, but they're not good pictures. So it's more kind of wish fulfillment that I got to write about people who could draw and write about a comic series without actually having to draw it myself.
So after Story Thieves in the comic books, where are you taking them next? Bethany seems to get, lost, sort of.
Yeah. So every book in the Story Thieves series is a different genre, and I started with fantasy and science fiction, and then there's a mystery, and then the superhero comic comes along, and then after that, one of the characters gets trapped in a choose-your-own-adventure type homage, where he has to negotiate with the readers to hopefully bring him in the right direction in this book to let him escape it.
Sort of like clapping your hands and saying you believe in fairies.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, so this ought to be good.
It was interesting to write because it's not only a choose-your-own-adventure type book, it's also a book about time travel. So there's quite a few options you can kind of take advantage of. You can either go to the past or the future. It kind of broke my brain to write it, but I'm hoping it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think it will. What are you going to do there, jump into 3D?
After that, I have no idea. I mean, I have a fifth book planned, but right now I just finished the fourth book, and I'm letting
your brain rest from its flavors.
Exactly.
Yes, I know exactly how that goes. So, James, were you always telling and making up stories when you were a kid?
I was, and I never thought about being a writer, though. I was always just sort of telling myself stories because I was sort of interested to see how they would end. I would come up with fun ideas, and I still do this, and I think probably every writer or every human being does this, where they kind of ask themselves questions, and they say, what would happen if this went that way? And then you just kind of want to know the answer. You kind of want to tell yourself the story to figure out where it goes.
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing as a kid. I was writing these down just to see how they went, and then I think it was around college where I realized maybe I could actually do this. I could actually tell other people stories and let them read them, and like that might actually be a career. It's crazy, but it so far it's worked.
And people actually pay you for it. That's the bonus.
That's crazy.
I mean, come on, it's better than baseball cards and comic books.
Exactly.
Because you can actually go to the bank and see it get put away out of its misery, or not.
That's a nice benefit.
Yes. I guess you could say the money gets shot, too. You just kind of stand it up and shoot for target practice, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. All those different notes. Yes. Well, we won't go there either. Musical, I'm not. Well, I used to be, but that's another story. So, James, please tell everybody where they could find you at the International Miami Book Fair.
Sure. So I will be there on Saturday, November 19th. I'll actually be there for a few days before, but meeting with some students from various schools around. But for the public, I'm going to be there on Saturday, November 19th from 3 to 4 at the Wembley's Author Tent, and I will be on a panel called Unlocking Secret Histories with Eugene Yelchin and Faith Erin Hicks. So if you have any questions about any of our books or about writing, have through all of those, and we'll be doing a signing afterwards as well if you want to get some books signed.
Terrific. And also, where can they find you or not, so to speak, on the World Wide Web?
My website is jamesrileyauthor.com, and I'm also on Facebook at James Riley Author, and I'm on Twitter at _JamesRiley_. because there's a famous soccer player named James Riley, and he probably took the first one.
You know, I find that when I try to look for a lot of these authors, you included, on LinkedIn or some of the other places, there are about 35 other people who have that same name, and funnily enough, one or two of them are even, dare I say it, famous. So,
it's weird how that works.
Yes, it's very scary when you say famous. So, ladies and gentlemen and children of all ages, please run, don't bother walking, go to the store, pick up Story Thieves by James Riley. You may or may not see him. He may be with the Thin Man. And if you don't know who the Thin Man is, go ask your parents or maybe your grandparents. They'll probably know. Someone in that family tree ought to know who the Thin Man is and ask them, because he probably saw James Riley. In fact, James Riley is probably hiding behind the Thin Man. That's possible. If you want to hear this interview all over again, and of course you do, I mean, come on, a voice without a body. You can hear the interview all over again at PassionateWorldRadioNetwork.com, Twitter.com, at CAULDWELL, Facebook.com/PWR Network, GooglePlus.com/PWR Network, and LinkedIn.com at, who else? Lillian Caldwell. And before you go away and stray, Edgar Allan Poe had this to say about reason: it may well be doubt whether human ingenuity can construct an enigma of the kind which human ingenuity may not, by proper application, resolve. Which is probably just the right one for Mr. Riley, who may or may not exist, depending on how you're looking at it or not. Thank you all very much for listening, and remember, please keep listening. Thank you.